Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates of the 21st IISS Manama Dialogue. Let me begin by thanking His Highness Sheikh Nasser, the National Security Advisor of the Kingdom of Bahrain and the Commander of the Royal Guard, for hosting the splendid opening dinner last night and for encouraging and engaging in our high-level conversation on the imperative for security cooperation alongside U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. I would also like to thank His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and the government of the Kingdom of Bahrain for their outstanding support for this dialogue and the IISS presence in the Middle East. The IISS is proud to convene this dialogue here in Bahrain, and while we meet at a time marked by volatility and fragility in the region and in the world, we also meet at a time where opportunities are beginning to present themselves for progress on an agenda that is perhaps a bit more hopeful and focused on peace, security, reconstruction, reintegration, and prosperity in the region. The IISS convenes important gatherings like the Manama Dialogue, but it is also a research organization at its core, and we are constantly looking for ways to make our research available and accessible. And at this 21st IISS Manama Dialogue, we're trying something new. We have developed for this year's summit the IISS Manama Dialogue 2025 AI Assistant, which is a prototype, but what it does is because we produce so much research and analysis on the strategic themes that are relevant to the discussion here at the dialogue, this AI assistant is intended to make it easier to find and summarize our research and hopefully inspire discussion. This platform is being made available to registered delegates at the dialogue, and it is only accessible here on the Wi-Fi. It draws on a curated data set comprising IISS publications and selected publicly available open source material. So you use it, you interact with it via a chat assistant. I encourage you to give it a try and let us know how you get on and how we can improve this further. And speaking of technology, some of you know this already, but we are technologically enabled also to guide our conversation here. So if delegates would like to ask a question, make an intervention, and there's a two-step process involved. You need to take your delegate badge and insert it into your microphone unit at your seat. You all will have noticed that you have a microphone unit at your seats. You insert that on the side, then you press the speak button, and then your microphone will light up green. That doesn't mean it is a live microphone, but it does mean that you're in the queue of the people seeking the floor, and when I then select you, I can activate your mic. It will then turn from green to red, and then you have a live microphone to ask your question and make your comment. And with that, it is now my pleasure to start our first plenary session, which has the title, The Future of Global Security Governance. Structural changes in global governance are occurring due to new geopolitical priorities of major players and the struggle of many to ensure coherent and effective geopolitical engagement. And many powers are pursuing geopolitical and geoeconomic objectives in tandem, and we have seen a multitude of bilateral and minilateral relationships develop in parallel to multilateral forums. And this session will discuss how international and regional powers seek to shape the international system to advance their security interests. And it's an honor to welcome three distinguished speakers to this session: Ayman Safadi, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jordan; Dr. Johan Wadefuhl, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany; and the Right Honorable Yvette Cooper, Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom. They will each offer their remarks from the podium, and we will then immediately open for questions. And a reminder to all of us that plenary sessions at the Manama Dialogue are on the record. Ayman, may I invite you to take the podium? Thank you very much.
Well, good morning to you all, and allow me to start by expressing our gratitude to our gracious host, the Kingdom of Bahrain. Abdul Latif, thank you so much for hosting us, and also thanks go to IISS for their continued efforts to bring us together for what has truly been a very open, very frank and very useful conversation over many, many years. So thank you all for having us. And I'm honored to be here along with my colleagues Johan and Evet on this forum. Bastian told me I have 8 minutes. I'm going to try and be shorter and probably yield my time for a more interactive conversation. But I'll try and be very brief. And I think I'll start from the title of our session, Global Security. And I think those two were and governance. And I think the three words really show how interconnected everything we're going to be addressing today is. Global, because it is true, our security is interconnected. Conflict in one part of our world is definitely going to have consequences for the rest of the world. So it is imperative that we look at all the challenges that we have from the point of view that all of us are going to be affected by whatever security challenges that emerge in any part of our worlds. And obviously, security is key for governance. And again, security needs to be looked at in its comprehensive sense, not just military hard security, but also soft security that addresses other challenges that undermine security. And obviously, we have security, we have governance, and again, everything is interconnected in that way. Unless we have proper security, we're not going to have proper governance. And I think no place in the world offers that many challenges related to all those issues than our part of the world, than our region. We continue to suffer tremendous security challenges. The crises in the region continue to have a global impact, and the absence of security is definitely impacting our ability to put in place governance structures that could yield the results of ensuring stability and peace and prosperity for the region, and ultimately the consequences of that for the world at large. I cannot but be specific because we're dealing with reality here, and the Manama dialogue has always been about being real and not being theoretical. And I think the biggest challenge that we still have is Gaza. Thankfully, we finally have a ceasefire, and it took for President Trump himself to interfere and make sure that we get to a ceasefire. And that is imperative. We have as a priority now to make sure that that ceasefire is stabilized, that it's not broken, and that the agreement that produced the ceasefire is committed to in all its components. When we started approaching the final days leading to the ceasefire, I think the priority for all of us was to end the bloodshed, because the continuation of the killing of the massacre was not going to yield anything but more destruction, more killing, more hatred, more dehumanization. The humanitarian catastrophe that was deepening in Gaza was starting to have even a larger impact. People were starving, children were dying from the lack of baby formula, from food, and the impact was, really becoming more intolerable for all of us. So I think the priority was to get the ceasefire, stop the starvation, allow for aid to come in conditions that would have been definitely, inevitably conducive to displacement of Palestinians, and then talk another day for the politics. So the real work begins now. How do we ensure security? Back to our, and unless we have security, we're not going to be able to move forward. We're not going to be able to have governance. So ensuring security for both, for Palestinians, for Israelis, is the key next step that we must all work towards. And we're all in the Arab Muslim group, along with our partners in Europe, and also along with the United States. And again, the proposal by President Trump that opened the door for ending the catastrophe and moving forward towards a better future is the thing on which we all are focused. How do we translate that proposal into action, into plans, into steps, into measures that guarantee the security and for all, for both, for Israelis and for Palestinians? So I think it is imperative that we have a Palestinian police that is in charge of the security of the Palestinians. That needs to be supported by an international stabilization force. We all agree on that. But we all agree that in order for that stabilization force to be able to be effective in getting the job done, it has to have a Security Council mandate so that other countries can come in, and so that we really work out the details of the interfacing between the international force and the Palestinian force, which again must be in charge of security of the Palestinians. And that international stabilization force could do a major work in deconfliction and also in helping the Palestinian police. And we in Jordan, along with our brothers in Egypt, have said repeatedly that we're willing and ready and able to train Palestinian police and deploy that force. Of course, the elephant in the room is going to be Israeli presence in Gaza. Israel remains in about 53% of Gaza. It is just, and again, I'm speaking here from the point of view of being practical, of trying to increase the workability of the plans that we have on the ground right now. With Israel staying in Gaza, I think security is going to be a challenge. So it is imperative that we have a timeline for the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Israel cannot stay in 53% of Gaza and then expect security to be achieved. So I think we have to look at all these things when it comes to security. We have to, deploy the Palestinian police, make sure that we have a clear scope of work for the Palestinian police vis-a-vis the international stabilization force that needs to be there, and work out a mechanism for dealing with the Israeli troops that are still in Gaza. And we all know that it's going to have to be a process to get them out. And I think it is imperative that we also have a deconfliction mechanism so that we don't have that confusion and we don't have security challenges being dealt with Israeli forces over the heads of the Palestinian police, which is going to create a problem. So how do we create a mechanism for deconfliction is something that I think we're going to have to address in order for us to be able to ensure that whatever security arrangements we put on the ground are going to be workable and are going to achieve their goal of stopping the bloodshed and not allowing for the conflict to re-erupt. And of course, it comes to governance. Once we have security, we're going to have to look at governance. And I think it is also imperative that Palestinians are ruled by Palestinians. I think, with all due respect, it's not going to work to bring people from outside the region to rule Gaza. And that's why I think the discussion now is on a Palestinian apolitical technocratic commission that somehow has to be linked to the PA, because we have to make sure that Gaza remains part of the occupied Palestinian territory, because all of us in the world agree that the two-state solution is the only path to the just and lasting peace that we all want. And I think in order for that two-state solution to be realized, Gaza and the West Bank must remain an integral part of each other and must be the ground on which the Palestinian state will have to eventually emerge as the condition for just and lasting peace that we all want. So we will have that, hopefully we will have that Palestinian commission that will be running the affairs of Gaza, and that commission should be supported. And I think we all realize the need for what I call personal international assistance mission that would come in and help the Palestinians in addressing the many challenges of ruling a place that has been turned to a wasteland over the past 2 years. Civil order has collapsed, there's no security structure, no functioning government structures, no health services, all the infrastructure that is needed to maintain stability are gone. And therefore, it is imperative that the world stands by the Palestinians that they try to rebuild. And I think, again, if we get that international assistance mission with clear mandate as, to help the Palestinians not only in planning, but also in capacity building, instituting building, I think that is also something that we have to look at. And of course, getting aid is a must. Gaza must be flooded with aid. After all this, the suffering the past 2 years, it is incomprehensible that aid should be a problem right now. The whole world is ready to send aid to Gaza, and I think Israel needs to lift obstacles against the entry of aid and against the ability of the UN organizations and other humanitarians to be able to do their job and to deliver the aid in Gaza. So if we do that, I think we'll be stabilizing for now, and then ultimately, of course, the big question is how do we create a political horizon that will restore hope, that will restore faith in the viability of peace, and convince people after 2 years during which, as I said, hatred, dehumanization have dug so many deep roots. Only if we restore hope, only if we restore faith in the viability of the peace process, that would deliver a future of peace that will guarantee the rights of the Palestinians and will also guarantee the right of Israel to security and acceptance. That is the only way we can move forward, and that's the only way in which we can ensure security, in which we can ensure governance, and ensure that the world at large is not going to be once again affected by what's going to happen in our part of the world, and that the conflict will not erupt. Of course, key to the stabilization of Gaza is the West Bank, because whatever we do in Gaza, if the West Bank erupts, that's going to be undermined. And therefore, it is also a must that we all come together and make sure that we prevent any actions that is going to lead to the eruption of violence or destabilization on the West Bank, and it is clear that unilateral measures that undermine the two-state solution must be stopped. You cannot speak of a future of peace and security if people lose hope, and if settlements continue to grow at the pace that we see. If the West Bank is annexed, then that is going to be the last nail in the coffin of all our aspirations for peace. And I think it was extremely important that President Trump was unequivocal when he said he will not allow the annexation of the West Bank. And that's something for which we're grateful, because that is a statement that President Trump is protecting the peace that must be the future of this region. Because if the West Bank is annexed, then there is no peace to talk about. So I think with the president coming on so strongly, so unequivocally, saying the West Bank cannot be annexed, I think that's a statement also that could be interpreted to mean that the president will protect the prospects for peace that are essential for our region and for the world at large. So I think the real work, the real hard work begins now when it comes to Gaza and the Palestinian issue. We have the ceasefire, as I said, must be protected, but now all of us need to come together with ideas to see how we can move forward, stabilize, but also move towards a better future. And here I must emphasize also the role of Europe. I've got two European colleagues here on the panel, and I think the role of Europe is key. Europe has traditionally been the largest donor to the Palestinian issue. We're going to need them in the reconstruction process of Gaza, which is going to be enormously expensive. And I think Europe's role is important, not just in terms of providing the funds, but I think Europe should also have a seat on the table in our discussion along with the region, along with the US and other global partners, in trying to work out a future that's going to be a future of peace and stability for the Palestinians. I move to another regional hotspot, which is Syria. I think Syria has been a good success story thus far. Syria must succeed. We must do everything we can to help the Syrian government in its efforts to rebuild Syria on grounds that guarantee its security, territorial integrity, safety of its people, and representation of all its people. Because if Syria, God forbid, falls into chaos, everybody's going to suffer. And the global consequences of Syria falling into chaos are going to be extremely enormous in terms of terrorism, drugs, migration, and all of that. So stabilizing Syria is a key. We've got a government that took over Syria after 14 years of chaos. They're doing everything they can to rebuild, and I think they deserve our support, full support in helping them overcome the challenges that they face, with a view, again, to rebuilding the country on grounds that restore hope to the Syrian people that their future is not going to be fraught with the despair and anger and oppression that marked their recent history. And again, Israeli meddling in Syria is something that has got to stop. The Syrian government is unequivocally saying it wants to focus on rebuilding its country. It does not want to be any security challenges with anyone. It will not pose a threat to anybody outside its territory. And it said it's committed to the 1974 armistice with Israel. And it said it's willing to respect whatever legitimate security guarantees that Israel has in Syria. Against this backdrop, it is just unacceptable that Israel continues to meddle in Syrian affairs, occupying Syrian land and meddling in Syrian domestic issues, thus destabilizing the country. So that is something that I believe is of great consequence, and I think all of us in the region and beyond have an interest in Syria succeeding.
Minister,
failure should not
thank you very much. That's a lot on the table.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I took more than I thought I would take, but the issues are too many. But again, I'm grateful to you all, and I look forward for our conversation. Thank you.
Minister, thank you very much. Thank you very much for outlining the steps that need to be, practical steps that need to be taken on the basis of the moment that has now been created. And there's probably a good conversation to be had about pace and what is achievable in what time frame. Thank you very much. I now turn to Johan Wadefull.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to be here this morning. I would like to thank, first of all, the IISS for inviting me once again. It's very good. I'm delighted to see my good friend, Sir John Chipman, once again. And I would like, of course, also to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for the hospitality, my good friend. It's really a privilege to be here this morning. Damascus is a paradise of the world. These are the words of the great geographer al-Muqaddasi, who traveled the Arab world and mapped it in the 10th century. As a foreign minister, my work allows me to be sort of a traveler myself. As it happens, before I came here to Manama, I got to see Damascus with my own eyes. And what I saw there was not a paradise, but the ruins and the rubble of a civil war that a murderous regime waged against its own people. But I also saw hope. The fall of the Assad regime marks a turning point in Syria's modern history, a chance for social reconciliation and for economic reconstruction. This process will be challenging, but already today, I can see that Syria is much freer than it was 1 year ago. We know, you know, that the political process still needs to become more inclusive and participatory. To put it simply, minorities must be protected. The Syrian state should be one where everybody finds its place. On this long path to peace, Germany is ready to accompany and to support Syria. We are committed to a positive future for Syria. But Syria is not the only example of positive change in this region, despite all its challenges. I'm happy and relieved to finally see progress in Gaza. We see hope around the region, a vision for a peaceful and prosperous future. We are grateful to President Trump for his strong commitment and for getting the 20-point plan done and agreed. We are grateful especially to our Arab partners, without whom a ceasefire and this very plan would not be achieved. And the Kingdom of Jordan and you, my friend, belong to these very core negotiators before the plan was revealed. Let us now again work together to support the 20-point plan and to iron out some crucial details, like the role of the PA and the pathway to a two-state solution. We all have a positive vision for the future of Gaza, one in which Israelis and Palestinians live in two states side by side in peace and security. My government fully supports this vision. We are one of the most important donors to humanitarian support to the people in Gaza, and by the way, to the PA as well. We have helped build Palestinian state institutions for more than 30 years. We will not stop now. For this mission to succeed, 3 main steps need to be taken. First, we still need more humanitarian access. The situation for civilians in Gaza remains dire. That is something I constantly raise with my Israeli colleague. Also, humanitarian assistance should not be politicized. Second, the International Stabilization Force in Gaza will need a clear basis in international law. We understand that this is of utmost importance to those countries who might be willing to send troops to Gaza and for the Palestinians. Germany also wants to see a clear mandate for this mission. And third, it is important that we pressure and contain those who actively work against this vision. Let us counter those who strive to instability and ensure that opponents to peace cannot succeed. In this spirit, I will do my part and reach out to those with influence in the region and beyond. We need to be clear. The only reason we finally see a positive development both in Syria and in Gaza is because we saw an alignment of forces. Not a complete alignment, of course. That never happens. But just enough to make it happen. And we keep going on. To be sure, there's still a lot of work on Gaza alone. But in this room, full of bright minds and bold leaders, let us think beyond the immediate. Just imagine, if we were to achieve a lasting peace in Gaza, we could use this precious alignment to address other pressing security challenges of our world, from Russia's unrelenting aggression in Ukraine to the ravaging civil war in Sudan. We all share one common interest. That interest is peace. That interest is security. With that vision in mind, we can think in terms of opportunities rather than crises. Opportunities such as cooperation in the development of new technologies, new forms of energy, AI, nanotech, and so on. Opportunities in the development of the whole region between the Mediterranean and the Gulf as an economic powerhouse. Progress demands optimism, but it also requires action. Let us act together. Thank you so much.
Minister Waterford, thank you so much for those remarks. And I think you posed this question of how do we expand on this alignment of forces has created this moment. How do we expand the dynamic in a positive way? And I'm grateful that you also mentioned other opportunities that may then follow. And some of these themes are, of course, also on our agenda here at the Manama Dialogue. Yvette Cooper, if I may invite you to take the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Bastian. It is a great pleasure to be here in Bahrain to join friends on the stage. And let me begin too by thanking His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the International Institute for Strategic Studies for bringing us together. This, the 21st Manama Dialogue, which from the outset, this gathering has been an important opportunity to discuss, seek solutions for regional issues that impact the whole world. The Syrian conflict, efforts to curb Iran's nuclear program, the war in Gaza, or terrorism or cybersecurity. Today, I think it is crucial. It represents much more than that because security issues have never been more interrelated. The attacks on shipping in the Red Sea impacting on global trade, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine impacting on the security and economies of Europe, the Middle East, and beyond, and the unfolding crisis in Sudan that could have much wider regional and global implications. And this morning's session is on global security governance at a time when regional conflicts are impacting on global security, when multilateral frameworks are being questioned, but yet when international cooperation is crucial to achieving the security and peace that we all seek. So I want to just reflect briefly on some of those most serious regional challenges to our global security and why they require both that individual leadership and from individual nations, but also the coming together through modernized and agile multilateral partnerships and approaches if we are to succeed. Because as we meet today, as Eamon and Johan have talked about, the ceasefire in Gaza has been in place for nearly a month. And it comes after 2 years of the most unimaginable suffering, which sent destabilizing shockwaves throughout the world. It is fragile, but it is in place, with many hostages finally returned to their loved ones, with urgently needed aid starting to increase, and a ceasefire that many thought would never happen, including, I suspect, many people here in this conference. And the fact that that ceasefire agreement was reached is a huge tribute to the leadership of the US and President Trump, working alongside Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey in the negotiations, but also backed by many more, including Jordan, including Saudi, including the Arab League, including many partners across Europe and the world, all part of a diplomatic process through the summer. The work of the New York Declaration that rejected Hamas, the historic decision by the UK, France, Australia, Canada, Portugal, and more to recognize the state of Palestine coming together at the UN General Assembly, and proposals put forward by many nations across the world towards a comprehensive plan for peace, not just a ceasefire, and ultimately the decisive leadership brought by President Trump and the US, drawing together the 20-point plan. But all of us know that this situation is still immensely fragile. We've seen further attacks, we've seen aid remain a trickle, not a flood, we've seen hostage families still waiting for some remains. And all parties must deliver on their commitments, and we need to also, all of us, lean in to make sure we have the momentum and the progress we need for a lasting peace, not simply the ceasefire. Gaza must not get stuck in a no man's land between peace and war. And progress is urgent. The UK is committed to playing that part. I agree with Johan that critical is increasing the flow of aid. Humanitarian aid cannot be conditional. We cannot leave children still facing famine. We cannot leave families desperately needing medical healthcare support. We need the progress on the governance proposals for a Gaza free from Hamas and enabled by a reformed Palestinian Authority. And we will need the new security arrangements in place through the stabilisation force and Palestinian police as well. And the UK will support this through drawing forward on our expertise on civil-military coordination and weapons decommissioning. The planning for long-term reconstruction, helping to unlock private finance. And also, we should expect all of this to need to be underpinned not just by one, but by a series of UN resolutions. And we know there is only one way to get the just and lasting peace, which is the two-state solution of Israel and Palestine living peacefully side by side. But the challenges of the next stage are going to be harder than the first. And it would be easy at this point for individuals, for nations, to start to pull back or to walk away because the challenges get too hard. But we have come this far, we cannot put that progress at risk. And now is more important than ever for our international cooperation and for everyone to lean in. But while in Gaza there is a prospect of fragile hope, in Sudan right now, there is just despair. And just as the combination of leadership and international cooperation has made progress on Gaza, it is currently badly failing to deal with the humanitarian crisis and the devastating conflict in Sudan, because the reports from Darfur in recent days are truly horrifying. Atrocities, mass executions, starvation, and the devastating use of rape as a weapon of war, with women and children bearing the brunt of the largest humanitarian crisis in the 21st century. For too long, this terrible conflict has been neglected, while suffering has simply increased. Whilst we have put forward resolutions at the UN Security Council demanding humanitarian access, over a year ago, it was shamefully vetoed by Russia. 6 months ago, the key partnership, the conference in London, did not achieve the objective we needed of a common approach to ending this war. Today, I am announcing from the UK government a further £5 million of humanitarian support in response to the violence in El Fasher, on top of the £120 million the UK is already providing this year across Sudan. But no amount of aid can resolve a crisis of this magnitude until the guns fall silent. So the world must do more. And that means we need to, just as we united in support of President Trump's peace initiative in Gaza, we need a new international drive to end the war in Sudan, with a ceasefire that can staunch the bloodshed, with the support not just within Sudan itself, but from across the world, and through the Quad, the UN, and every forum too. But whether it be through Sudan, whether it be in Gaza, or whether it be in Ukraine, where Russia's ongoing assault is threatening European security, and where no one wants a just peace more than Ukraine, and where we will continue to pursue economic sanctions until Putin abandons his failed war and gets ready to negotiate for peace. But in each of these cases, international cooperation has been and continues to be crucial. Sometimes that has taken new forms through the coalition of the willing, through the partnerships built up around achieving the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. But in each of those cases, that leadership, individual leadership, has depended on those strong partnerships in place. And that is why we need to continually modernize our global architecture to ensure that it can be there when we need it to deliver the security and the peace that all of us need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those remarks, and I think that call to action on delivering on commitments, on promises, but also broadening the perspective a little bit to point out that while we're making progress somewhere elsewhere, conflict is raging in quite extreme forms, and we might not quite have despite the many formats, some of which you mentioned, we haven't found a way to address that in even a remotely effective way. So we will now open up for questions. I will take maybe 5 or 6 in the first round, and then we'll return to the panel, and then we'll get another round in. We have about 50 minutes for discussion now, and as many of you know, we have a very active young leaders group here amongst us. So I will make sure that I call on a few of them as well as we go on. But first on my list is Simon Mail from the UK. Simon, your mic is live.
Thank you very much, Bastian. It's very understandable that the focus of all 3 speakers is the ongoing situation in Gaza, Israel, the Palestinian issues. But if you get a bigger map, one of the features of the Middle Eastern environment that I view as most hopeful at the moment is the military, economic, and ideological weakening of Iran. And although the Foreign Secretary mentioned the nuclear file, often that has been used by Iran as a cover for the activities of its proxies, the militias in Hamas, obviously Lebanon, the Hashd al-Shab in Iraq. And I'd just be interested to hear the panel's views on what we do now about Iran, because to my mind, the weakening there offers huge hope for all those regions, because Iran's always used the Arab world as its strategic depth in a malign manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we'll take a few more from Oman and from the Young Leaders Group, Hailana Al-Busaidi.
Good morning, everyone. This is Hailana Al-Busaidi from the GCC General Secretariat. I just wanted to touch bases on Sudan. There is an extremely annoying international silence on what's going in Sudan. And Al-Fashir. Sudan has the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, and a lot are not talking about it because it forces you to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations about anti-blackness and about who gets humanitarian aid extended to and who gets ignored. And this is how greed, racism, and power shapes who gets empathy and who gets ignored. Sudan is bleeding right now, and empathy isn't emotional, it's intellectual. What are governments doing right now to save Sudan?
Thank you very much. From the United States and from The Economist, Greg Karlstrom.
Thank you, Bastian. Greg Karlstrom, Middle East correspondent for The Economist. 2 questions for Minister Safadi. First, around security in Gaza. On that stage 2 years ago, you said there will be no Arab troops going to Gaza, none. Do you still think that's the case? And if there is a stabilization force made up entirely of non-Arab troops, will that have legitimacy in Gaza? And then second, around reconstruction, there's been some talk in Jerusalem and Washington about if Hamas refuses to disarm, starting the process of reconstruction to the east of the so-called Yellow Line, so in Israeli-controlled parts of Gaza. I'm wondering what you think about that.
Thank you very much. And from the Netherlands, Maya Nouwens.
Thank you, Bastian, and thank you to the panel. In all of your remarks, you rightly discussed the role of countries from this region and from the West to ensure the ceasefire turns into a lasting peace and rebuilding of Gaza. But China, of course, is increasingly positing itself as a global leader on security, including through its Global Security Initiative. My question, therefore, is, seeing as it has taken a rather hands-off approach to engagement on security in this region in the recent conflicts, are you satisfied with China's role to date? And what are your expectations of China moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I might take 2 or 3 more from Bahrain and the Young Leaders Group, Anauf Al-Awadi.
Good morning, Excellencies. I wanted to address my question to His Excellency Minister IISS Safadi. History in international relations has taught us that ceasefires can last between a few hours and a few decades. However, considering the volatility of the region, what are the mechanisms in place now and that will be in place in the future to ensure that both parties do not break the ceasefire and thus taking the region into another chapter of instability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take 2 more and then we'll return to the panel. I might give warning, Yvette, I might start with you and then we'll come to Johan and then Ayman, since there are a few that are directed specifically to you, we'll end the round with you. But let's take 2 more. Tom Beckett from the UK. Tom.
Thank you, Bastian. It's a short question, but since we've got 3 important foreign ministers on the stage, I'd like to know if they think if the international rules-based order is dead, and if they don't think it's dead, could they explain why?
Thank you, Tom. That's very crisp. And we'll take 1 more in this round from Saudi Arabia, Shafi Al-Damar.
Thank you so much. The proposal that was mentioned by Mrs. Cooper about the administration of Gaza is perfect. But how can the UK and other partners put an effort in order to encourage the other to go ahead with this plan, particularly the USA? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's return to the panel for a round of responses, and then we'll turn again to the audience for a second round of interventions and questions. Yvette, may I ask you to start us off in this round?
Yeah, just to pick up a few of the questions. I think on Iran, we know that Iran has been obviously a long-term threat to the stability and security across this region, but also more widely in the UK. We have had Iran-backed threats on our streets too. So I think coordinated action in order to address the threats and the challenges from Iran will continue to be important. It's why we took the approach, and Johan and I worked together on the snapback process, because we took the nuclear threats so seriously and will need to continue to do so. On the Sudan issue, I strongly agree with this question. I think this conflict has been ignored for far too long, and it is desperate. The scale of the crisis that is taking place, the scale of the atrocities that are taking place almost as we speak in Sudan, and the fact that millions of people face famine in Sudan. We need the same kind of international energy and commitment that we have seen rightly around Gaza, but we need that same level of energy and commitment around Sudan, most immediately to get the ceasefire, to get urgently needed humanitarian aid in place, but also to get respect for international humanitarian law in place on all sides, and the pressure to come from all nations on the parties involved as well. The issues around the security, some of the security issues, reconstruction issues in Gaza. I think the reconstruction we need to keep Gaza together, not have greater fragmentation within Gaza, and also to see this as the UK's strong, long-held view that we need the 2-state solution, and that does mean Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem to be part of a future Palestine living peacefully alongside the state of Israel. But we know there are so many steps in terms of maintaining this ceasefire. The question about how the ceasefire needs to be maintained at the moment. I believe that we should be seeking to strengthen a formal monitoring process, a formal independent monitoring committee to be able to deal with what will inevitably be incidents that will take place to ensure that they don't destabilize the ceasefire as a whole. Of course, that means we will need the progress both on what the governance processes should be, the transitional governance arrangements for Palestine to be led by Palestinians, but to know that there will need to be transitional arrangements and there will need to be those security guarantees, the security and stabilization forces in place. We know that none of this will be easy, but it does require everyone to lean in. And in terms of how China plays into this, well, I hope, as a for example, as we will need UN resolutions, and I think a series of them, to underpin this process at different stages along the way, I hope China will strongly support those UN resolutions, because although there have been different leaderships, different regional processes, ultimately we will need the underpinning of that UN process to provide the right kind of legal framework as well. Which goes, I think, then to Tom's final question about, is the international rules-based order somehow over? I think what we are seeing at the moment is something that is more varied and more high energy, that's taking place with different forms of leadership and regional partnerships and frameworks in order to drive the response to individual conflicts. But ultimately, they need to be underpinned, as we've seen in Gaza, by the UN resolutions, by that international rules-based order, and by that international process. So yes, I strongly believe in still a rules-based order. It needs to modernize, but it needs ultimately to underpin any work that we do to deliver security and peace.
Thank you very much. Johan.
Yeah, thank you. And Yvette already mentioned that the United Kingdom, Germany, and France are working in the E3 format on the Iran fail together. And of course, we took the nuclear threat very seriously and had to trigger, unfortunately, the snapback mechanism. We included in all our talks with Iran, of course, the behavior of Iran here in the region, and of course also the missile program, and we will do so also in the future. And as we said to Iran, we are ready for new negotiations. We are ready, we are waiting for a call, which we didn't receive right now. But of course, the behavior of Iran here in the region will also be part of our further negotiations with Iran. Sudan is absolutely an apocalyptic situation there, the greatest humanitarian crisis of the world, which must not be overseen. Violence against the civilian population must stop immediately. The RSF have publicly pledged to protect civilians, and they will be held accountable for these actions. And on the other side, expelling senior World Food Program representatives is nothing but cynicism. So SAF needs to reverse this decision. A ceasefire is needed. We warn against the division of the country. China's role in the world is a very important one, but China has to play a more productive role, as it is one of the P5 members of the Security Council, and it has a special responsibility to contribute to peace, not only in Ukraine, but also in this very region. And we do not see a readiness in China, and encourage them to be active in Ukraine with all its influence on Russia, as well as here in the region. Gaza is mainly, Ayman, you are asked to give an answer, and as the two of us just met 2 days ago, we are reading from the same page. I would say only one sentence. We really have to speed up. My fear is that we are that we are running out of time. Ceasefire is good. That was very necessary. We needed a surge of humanitarian aid, as I said before, but we really need to fill the vacuum within the Gaza Strip for security, for administration, and we really have to do that as soon as possible in order to avoid that Hamas is again taking over, I would say, power in the Gaza Strip, and that, of course, could be again a motivation for Israel to once again use military force, and that, of course, is not the way ahead we are planning. So please, everybody, let's step up and let's become quicker. And I know that you are in your format convening in the next days. This is very important. Lastly, the international rules-based order is challenged as each and every legal system. So in Germany, it is forbidden to murder people, but it's happening. So, but this is normal, and our legal system is not over. It is violated on a daily basis. If you go to traffic in thousands or millions of times, but it's not over. You see that we now, in this very situation, with regard to the Gaza Strip, have a consensus, nearly a consensus, I would say, that a new Security Council mandate is needed to legitimate the use of force through the international stabilization forces further on. That shows that in the end of the day, everybody's going back to our international rules-based order, and that we are on a very good way to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ayman, may I invite you to address some of the questions, in particular the ones that were asked to you directly on how do we assure adherence to the ceasefire and prevent future instability, but then also legitimacy of the stabilization force. Those questions, please.
Thank you so much. I mean, again, very, very quickly, Sudan, I echo the comments of my colleagues here. Sudan has got to be addressed. Sudan has not received the attention it deserves. A humanitarian crisis of inhumane proportions is taking place there, and I think we've got to stop that. And we all need to come together to do that. On Iran, I think we all in the region want good relations with Iran. Iran is part of the region, and therefore working out a mechanism in which Iran is integrated and part of the region is a priority for all of us. But in order for that to happen, we really need to address the causes of tension with Iran, and why is it that many of us in the region have had problems with Iran in the past, and that means addressing its regional policies and ensuring that we move towards relationships on the basis of non-interference in the affairs of others and respecting the sovereignty of other countries. So we need to engage in that dialogue, and we need to make sure to get to that point. If we just focus on the nuclear file alone, I think that does not address all the reasons for problems in this aspect of the region. But I think let's put everything on the table and have a very frank, open dialogue. Why we are here, what are the reasons, address them, and then move forward. And the only way for that is to make sure that everybody respects sovereignty, territorial integrity of the other, and there's no interventionism or meddling in the affairs of the others. I think on Gaza, look, I mean, ultimately, the agreement that has been reached needs to be respected, adhered to by all parties. It took us 2 years to get there, and finally we have something. It's not ideal, but it's a very, very important start. It saves lives. So everybody has to be committed to the ceasefire agreement that was reached. Going forward, I think it is imperative that we understand that we need to go step by step, but not towards an unknown. We need to go step by step towards a clear end game. For now, stabilizing Gaza, ensuring that we address the catastrophic consequences of the war, but ultimately that should be linked to a political horizon that would deliver the just and lasting peace, whose only path is the two-state solution. We cannot have a fragmentation of Gaza, and I agree totally with you, Yvette, and Johan and I had this conversation. Gaza is one, and Gaza is part of the occupied Palestinian territory. So I don't want to be addressing theoretical possibilities right now, but I would say is that in order for us to get to the end game that we all want, which is lasting and just peace, Gaza needs to be one. Everybody needs to adhere to the ceasefire agreement, and all the hard work in terms of working out security mechanisms, governance and political horizons must continue. On the stabilization force, look, I mean, I can speak for Jordan, and I can tell you what His Majesty has said not too long ago. We're too close to the issue, and we cannot deploy troops on Gaza to police Gaza. That said, we can do a lot more in terms, again, we've been playing a major role in being a humanitarian hub for Gaza. We can train the Palestinian police. We can cooperate with the International Stabilization Force in terms of also offer training and be part of command and control and offer whatever help that we can. But being on the ground is something that we do not entertain because, as I said, we're too close to the conflict. But the key, again, the word that I think we're approaching this from is workability. We all want the same thing. There, again, the President Trump's plan has a lot of ideas. How do we make them more workable? How do we create conditions that would ensure they deliver their objective of ensuring the end of conflict and getting us to peace? And workability, within that definition, it is imperative that Palestinians are secured by Palestinians, that Palestinians are governed by Palestinians. You cannot have the International Stabilization Force doing the policing of the Palestinian community. Remember, you're talking about over 2 million people who've been traumatized over 2 years, as I said, where civil order has collapsed. So it is imperative that there is a Palestinian police that's well-trained, well-equipped, acting with a very clear mandate in cooperation with a stabilization force that will be offering support, offering assistance, and also deconflicting with the Israelis. And again, I think one major issue we're going to have to address is a timeline for Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. I do understand that is contingent on putting all the pieces together, but I think all of us are committed to working together to putting all those pieces together. And in the Arab Muslim group that's led by Saudi Arabia, we've been doing a lot of work on that. I can assure you we're not short of ideas. We have enough ideas that will ensure the workability of the plan, and we'll be discussing those ideas with our partners in the US and Europe as well. So this is what we need to be doing. How do we make conditions work? And ultimately, again, I link it back to the West Bank. Ultimately, we need to restore faith and peace. What is the end game? The end game must be peace. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in the same vicious cycle. We've got to ask, we've got to look at the root cause of conflict. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict needs to be resolved. The world agrees that 140 plus countries have recognized the Palestinian state, and that is extremely important in terms of it reflecting where the world stands on the future of the conflict. We have the New York Conference Declaration that clearly states what needs to be done. If we're all committed to that, if we all work together on that, I think we'll be able to move to a better future and restore hope, and again, guarantee peace and security for Palestinians and for Israelis. Other than that, I think we'll find ourselves in the same vicious circle and over again. So all of us are ready to do their parts. We in the Kingdom are definitely willing and ready to do our part. And I think in cooperation and complementarity with our partners, we should be able to move forward.
Thank you very much. I have more than a dozen people on the list here seeking the floor. So I'll try and get to many of you now in a second round. And we'll start with Edward Brown from the UK.
Thank you very much indeed. My question is about the Gaza Stabilization Force, and I'm sorry if I sound a little bit like a dog with a bone, but we've heard from all of the speakers the critical nature of humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and even monitoring, which of course we all agree with. But the lack of an international security force in Gaza has led already to a security vacuum which puts the ceasefire at risk and the world's ability to deliver those other very critical functions. Now, we've heard and completely understand that Jordan will not deploy troops on the ground, but of course somebody must. Are you able to say a little bit more about what is the plan, who leads it, who trains it, and what time frame? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from the Young Leaders Group and from Jordan, Mohammed Hawash.
Thank you. Ms. Cooper, thank you for naming the use of rape as a weapon of war in Sudan. It's one of the ugliest crimes that could be committed. So my question is for the whole panel, what are you doing to fight back, not only in Sudan, also in Palestine? There have been tens of cases after the release of Palestinian hostages emerging about the use of rape as a weapon of war by Israeli soldiers who carry British and German weapons. So what are you doing to fight back there as well?
Thank you. From Germany, Ben Schwer.
Thank you, Bastian. My question is for Foreign Minister Wadepoel and Secretary Cooper. I mean, you both spoke about the need for much increased European efforts to help stabilize the conflicts in this region, but I wonder how realistic this is, given that, Ukraine, for instance, quickly runs out of money and weapons and is arguably much closer to home. There's economic pressures in Europe and skeptical public, so I wondered if you could maybe comment on how do you ensure that much increased assistance can actually be forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Leila Moran.
Thank you very much, Bastian and the panel. I want to build on Tom Beckett's excellent question earlier, which was actually my first question about the international rules-based order, because I'm hearing it on doors in the UK, which I never thought I would. Normally it's potholes and dog poo, but the international rules-based order is coming up as an election issue. So what is the point of it if countries pick and choose what they decide that they're going to enact? And I give the specific example of the ICJ advisory opinion on the occupation, which came out in 2024. The UK still hasn't responded. I don't know about Germany and Jordan, but when are countries going to abide by the decisions taken in the international rules-based order so that we can report back to people and say, actually, it matters and it works?
Thank you very much. I'll take a few more from Singapore, Hussein Zulhisham.
Thank you. I just had one question for all the panelists. According to Palestinian public polls, the support for the Palestinian authorities are at an all-time low. Do you believe that it is feasible to continue support, and are there plans to buttress its legitimacy?
Thank you very much. From the Young Leaders Group and from Bahrain, Mahdi Ghulam.
Well, hello, thank you, Your Excellencies. This is Mahdi Ghulam from the ORF Middle East think tank. So the common conception amongst observers is that the Gulf states will be the major financiers of reconstruction in post-conflict areas such as Syria and Gaza and others. How do the panelists read this prediction? And what parallel avenues are there for reconstruction financing? And what role do you see your respective countries or multilateral institutions playing?
Thank you very much. From the United States, Abigail House-Lohner.
Thank you. President Trump's peace plan includes disarmament of Hamas. Could you speak a little bit about, this is for, Minister Safadi, who will disarm Hamas if that is an objective to be completed? Who specifically should do that? What does disarmament of Hamas mean? And if the disarming force is a Palestinian police force, as you described as the people who should be policing Gaza, will that include people previously affiliated with Hamas? Thank you.
Thank you very much. From the UK, Matthew Simmons.
I'd like to ask the panel what makes them think that Israel has any genuine intention of pulling out of the 52% of Gaza that it occupies, and what might change that intention.
Thank you very much. Also from the UK, Robert Ward.
Thank you, Bastian, and thank you to the panel. A question to the Foreign Secretary, if I may. The UK has growing security commitments across the world, in Europe, in this region, and of course in the Indo-Pacific. Expectations of the UK's role and support are also very high amongst allies and partners such as Japan and others. How does the UK balance or maintain these expensive commitments given the severe constraints on the UK's domestic resources? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take two more and then we'll return to the panel. From Germany, Sascha Bruchmann. Sascha.
Good morning, Excellencies. You all mentioned the UN Security Council resolution on Gaza, and in the background of the snapback sanction is the UN Security Council resolution. We heard the Russians and Chinese would have not allowed it had it not been for the way that they were designed. So my question with the resolution discussion on Gaza is, are we seeing that global geopolitics has an influence on the UN Security Council? Is it going back to a state where closer to the Cold War, where the big powers cannot agree and there's a bit less of a role for the UN Security Council to play in peacekeeping, peace enforcement, and what we've gotten used to over the last 30 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, in this round, from the UAE, Mina Al-Oraibi.
Mina Al-Oraibi from The National. Thank you. The future of global security governance will require, beyond just the announcements of disarmament, making sure that those carrying the weapons have a place to go, reintegration into society, be it PKK members dropping their arms and crossing the border from Turkey to Iraq, be it different armed groups in Syria. What role can governments that are represented in the panel play to help in disarmament actually becoming societal reconstruction beyond bricks and mortar?
Thank you very much. So let's return to the panel. Ayman, I'll start with you in this round, and then we'll move our way back, and then we see how we're doing for time, whether we can have a third round. There are still a few people on the list. I haven't forgotten you. We'll see how we get on. Ayman.
Thank you so much. Just quickly on the international law. I don't think we have a problem with the international law. I think we have a problem with the quite often selectivity in the application of international law, and that is something that needs to be addressed, because it is, without the rule-based order, I think we'll be living in chaos. So I think we really have to take a deep look into what has happened over the past few years and why is it that international law is losing its credibility. On the issue of, again, Gaza, look, I mean, I've got to be honest with you, we're still working out ideas. I mean, everybody's in discussion. I think what we know is that everybody wants this conflict over. All of us want the same end game here. Question is, how do we make it work? And still a lot of ideas back and forth. It's not easy to address a situation as catastrophic that Gaza has become after 2 years of war. So many variables, as you said, but it's work in progress, and we're all working to that. But again, the point of departure is how do we make whatever ideas we put on the table work? And I think all of us have something to bring to the table in this conversation. On the issue of Hamas disarmament, I think, look, Hamas itself has said it will not be part of the governance of Gaza going forward, that we will have a Palestinian technocratic committee governing Gaza, supported by the international community within a clear mandate that will, again, ultimately make sure that Gaza stabilizes and moves forward towards a future of peace. A lot of details will have to be worked out. The Palestinian police that will have to take care of Gaza has to be vetted, trained, supported by all of us. The link to the PA must be there. So I think ultimately we will be able to work out answers to all those questions, but it's still work in progress. And I think what we all know, though, is that Gaza has to be secure, that I think a lot of us agree that the policing has to be done by the Palestinian police, a Palestinian police force that should be vetted, accepted, trained, capable, enabled by all as well. And then everything is going to have to be part of an ecosystem. And the ecosystem should address the three major components after the ceasefire: humanitarian aid and early recovery, security, governance, and political horizon. I think within those four headlines, if everything has to work out into place, and once we do that, we'll be able to move forward. On the PA, look, I mean, the PA, we all support the PA. We recognize the PA as the representative of the Palestinian people. It's the government of the Palestinians. President Abbas has committed to major reforms. The PA itself is saying that it needs to be able to reform to be able to move forward, and that's something that we all support. And again, after 2 years of war in Gaza and the narrowing of political horizon, the loss of hope of Palestinians that there's a path forward, it is not unexpected for people to lose faith in everything, including institutions. But I think if we're able to restore hope, if we're able to say that there is an end game that would deliver the rights of the Palestinians within the context of the two-state solution, along with the reforms that President Abbas have committed to, I think we'll be able to restore people's confidence in the whole process. But one thing also we need to put on the table. Why is the PA not popular? Part of it has to do with politics, and part of it has to do with political realities. The PA is not being able to pay salaries right now because Israel is still withholding almost $3 billion in money it owes the Palestinians, and that's the taxation money that the Israelis collect on behalf of the Palestinians. There are hundreds of checkpoints in the West Bank, so if a Palestinian wants to move from a village to a village, it should take him 10 minutes, it's taking him 2 hours or 3 hours a day. That's why I keep saying we need to look at the whole ecosystem. And the PA has reforms that it said it wants to do, and we believe it must do, because that will be in the interest of the Palestinian people and the interest of the PA itself. But Israel has a lot to do as well. And all of us have a lot to do in terms of agreeing on how we move forward and challenging whatever that is going on wrong. And I think, again, back to the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that peace can be delivered through the two-state solution. Now we all know, and let's be realistic, now is not the time to achieve the two-state solution because the components are not there for it. But now is definitely the time to protect the two-state solution. Because if we protect the two-state solution now, then we protect the future of peace for the whole region, because there's simply no alternative to that. So any measure that undermines the two-state solution must be challenged, and the party that undermines the two-state solution must be held to account. That is how we move forward, and that's how we maintain credibility of our narrative and our political position. So as I said, many details have yet to be worked out yet, but I think the good thing is that all of us have come together in the region and beyond to say we've got to end this problem, and we all remain in conversation on how to achieve that. And if I may, one word, we did not mention Lebanon at all, and I think it is imperative that we mention Lebanon as well, because Lebanon could be a success story. I mean, I think all the makings for Lebanon to stabilize are there, and I think all of us need to go back. Again, the golden rule is that support Lebanon institutions, support Lebanon's integrity and sovereignty, and we'll be able to move forward.
Thank you very much. Johan.
I can also associate myself completely with what Ayman said, especially on Lebanon, coming just from Lebanon and meeting the president, the foreign minister, and the prime minister. They are on a very good way to really bring the monopoly of power back to the state, which is very important, and they have our full support. I think I'm not only speaking for Germany, but also on the behalf of the European Union. So bringing the LAF, so the Lebanese armed forces, back to the role to be the only military power and police power in the state and to defend the state and its institutions is crucial, and they have our full support on that way ahead. The international rules-based order is still alive, and of course the justice system is part of that. And of course we have abided to decisions taken by the International Court of Justice. In the opinions, prepare decisions, and of course we are reading these opinions, and they are of course very important. But for Germany, it's absolutely clear that the International Court of Justice has to be defended, has to be workable, and that everybody has to abide to his decisions, and that is for everybody. Everybody is equal before this court and before the law. The good thing is, thinking about, you spoke, Ayman, about the bigger picture. The bigger picture we are reading all from the same page here in Europe, in the United States, and in the Muslim and Arab countries here around. Everybody knows that the two-state solution is the only solution to find a peaceful cooperation and to live peacefully and with a lasting peace together, Israelis and Palestinians. And that is also, in the end of the day, well known in Israel. And they want to defend, of course, also the Abraham Accords system and perhaps enlarge it and encourage other states to associate and to be part of that. And if so, and what I heard from Benjamin Netanyahu, especially in the Knesset, and also what he said in Washington, was he's had the clear will to do that. And we should take him by word, give him the chance, but also say what it means for the future. And that means to give Palestinians a chance for a state-building process, which has now to begin. And as I said before, we have to accelerate the speed, because rightly the question was raised, what about the vacuum of power we do now see within the Gaza Strip? So it is clear we need these international stabilization forces. Fortunately, a lot of Muslim countries have said they are ready to be part of it. You have heard it. It's Indonesia. It may be Pakistan and others as well. They have to decide whether they will be part of it. The precondition is, of course, we need again this UN Security Council allowance for that, the resolution. This is needed, but if it's there, they will be active, and they will play a role. And of course, the readiness of the Kingdom of Jordan and Egypt to train the Palestinian police is very important, and I can only encourage the both countries to really begin it right now, because if it's right that Palestinians... You have started yesterday. You were ready to start yesterday. Okay, very good. That's a good sign, and I would really to thank you for that engagement. That is so important. And of course, these then have to play the role to disarm Hamas. This is a precondition, to be absolutely clear. Without disarmament from Hamas, without being very clear that Hamas itself cannot play a political role in the Gaza Strip, we will not come to a positive solution. But the will is there, and they will all have our support. And Germany, together with the UK and other European countries, we are ready to give assistance not only to the PA, which we have done before. We are one of the biggest donors for PA and for the Palestinians in the past, and we will do so in the future. We are ready to play an important role together with Egypt in the reconstruction conference, which we hope Egypt will host within the next weeks. And Germany is ready to be there in the Gaza Strip and elsewhere in Palestine, together with Egypt and with other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Secretary Cooper. On these broader questions, but then there was also a specific question of how the UK might balance the multiple global commitments, fairly high expectations, but a resource constrained. Over to you.
Yeah. So starting with those questions, both for the UK, maybe for Europe as a whole, clearly one of the most immediate security challenges we face is the war in Ukraine and the additional pressures that means for us, for defence, for security. And it's one of the reasons why we are the UK government is substantially increasing our investment in defence, as is Germany, as are other European countries. And we know that we need to take on the greater responsibilities around that defence investment and security partnerships that are linked to that. But when it comes to other parts of the world, other areas, and including our role in terms of supporting the ceasefire and peace process in the Middle East, in many ways that will be a role which is about providing expertise and diplomacy and support for the role that other partners play. We too, alongside Jordan, have been involved in training Palestinian police officers, for example, in the past. That is something we would like to continue to support being able to do. We have expertise that goes back to the experiences in Northern Ireland, for example, on demining, and we have significant expertise in where we know that there are unexploded ordnances across Gaza as we speak that are preventing aid getting through because no one knows whether streets are safe, whether buildings are safe, where we are funding, putting additional funding into support through the UN and through some of our expertise and agencies based in the UK to be able to do those kinds of assessments, practical measures like that, that I think all of us need to be part of, and of course part of those international debates around some of the crucial questions. And the second area I think of questions was around some of those next steps on the ceasefire agreement, be it around the next steps in terms of Hamas response, the next steps in terms of the Israeli government response, the International Stabilization Force or the Palestinian police force. I think, look, at the heart of this is that all parties signed up not just to the immediate ceasefire agreement, but to a broader peace process and to the 20-point plan that was outlined by President Trump. And that means all parties needing to continue to be part of that. Hamas making commitments to disarm. Israel making commitments to be part of a process of withdrawing from Gaza. Yes, there are going to be steps along the way. None of these processes are going to be swift. There will be sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back in all of the different negotiations that will need to take place. But we have to hold everyone to that process. We will only be able to do so if we keep the momentum up. That means crucially getting the humanitarian aid flowing much more swiftly than it is already, but also the additional progress on what kind of the detail around the Palestinian committee, so that Palestine is led by Palestinians, around the UN resolutions that we have discussed, and yes, the crucial work on the international stabilization force as well. On the decommissioning disarmament process, again, there are ways in which that can also be done through independent monitoring processes as well. And again, it will require creativity, but it's very, very easy to come up with all the reasons why things won't work. The challenge for us is what are the practical steps to make sure that it does. Questions, I think, on the UN, the rules-based order. I think Johan's responded to many of those about the importance of their international judicial institutions, but also the importance of the UN. Obviously, look, it is a challenge, the fact that a UN Security Council permanent member has invaded a sovereign nation next door. And that undermines actually many of the values of the UN founding charter. So that is challenging for the operation of the UN, but it doesn't mean we walk away from the UN processes because we still recognize the importance of them and the importance of modernizing the UN for the future as well. Just say something about, there was a question further about rape as a weapon of war. You know, it was 25 years ago yesterday that the global community made a commitment through UN Resolution 1325 to protect women and girls from the horrors of war, to ensure that they are not just the victims of conflict, but they can be leaders in peace. And that commitment must not be forgotten. It feels at the moment as though we have gone backwards on the use of rape as a weapon in war, on the use of sexual violence in conflict. We have a responsibility, again, all of us. Some of that is about the rules of war. Some of that is about the pressures around conflict, the response to conflict. Some of it is also, frankly, about the approach to tackling violence against women and girls in each of our own countries. We have made a commitment in the UK to halve violence against women and girls in a decade. We would love to work with countries across the world on those kinds of commitments so that we ensure that, that everyone can live in freedom from fear. Final point I wanted to say is the societal reconstruction question that was asked, not just about physical reconstruction, but societal reconstruction. I think this is crucial. Johan and I were in Northern Ireland a few weeks ago in Belfast, where we are 3 decades on from the Good Friday Agreement. But we were hosting an event of the Berlin process, which was Balkan nations, Western Balkan nations, coming together as part of reconciliation and peace processes 30 years on from the Dayton Accord. And many of our discussions were actually about how challenging it can still be, even decades on, from deep and serious conflicts, but how much it is about communities agreeing to work together, as well as about having the political commitments and the government commitments in order to make peace work. We know that peace isn't easy, but we also know that it matters more than anything else.
Thank you very much. We will start our next session in 31 seconds. We'll have a very short staging break now, but I'd like to thank the three ministers for such an engaging conversation and for dealing with the many questions that were posed to you and for putting your thoughts up for debate. I think we're off to a very good start, and the key theme is, of course, using this opportunity well, but not forgetting the many challenges that lurk just beyond, and getting the pacing and the ambition and the gradual progress right. I think that will be very hard. As you said, it's only going to get harder from here. Thank you so much. May I invite you all to thank our fantastic panel. Thank you very much.